Здравствуйте! Как мы рекомендовали ранее, на ресурсе Randall's ESL Cyber Listening Lab можно практиковать навыки аудирования в соответствии с уровнем владения языка. Разберем несколько заданий уровня Intermediate: Baby Toys, Baking Cookies и Budget Hotel Rooms, пройдя по соответствующей ссылке. Материал сайта организован таким образом, что каждое прослушивание сопровождается разнообразными упражнениями, как до, так и после, вопросами, стимулирующими самостоятельный поиск информации, и заданиями типа Mixed Up Sentence, Multiple Choice Questions, Gap Fill Exercise, Sentence and Vocabulary Matching. Начнем с игрушек. Задание первое. Baby Toys. Чтобы настроить слушателей на тему игрушек, в этом задании предлагается обратить внимание на различные возрастные группы детей и вспомнить игрушки, которые им больше всего нравятся. Pre-listening exercises, как раз они содержат упоминания о тех возрастных группах, которые, соответственно, называются infants, toddlers, preschoolers, grade schoolers и teens. Между прочим, это неплохой способ пополнить свой словарный запас полезной лексикой, называющей игрушки для детей разного возраста. Stacking rings, activity cube, puppet theater, kids microscope and spike ball game set or wireless portable speaker. Расширению вокабуляра также способствуют идиомы, звучащие в аудиозаписи, поясняется их реальное значение и приводятся примеры употребления. Toy with something. I am toying with the idea of traveling to Europe, but I am not sure I have enough money. Like a kid with a new toy. My father's like a kid with a new toy. He can't stop playing with his new iPhone. После прослушивания ребят ожидают упражнения в виде вопросов, отвечая на которые они усваивают соответствующую лексику. Вот опять в разделе Post Listening Exercise вы можете увидеть вопросы, которые им адресованы. Другая группа вопросов побуждает их обратиться к сетевому пространству и найти дополнительную информацию об известных во всем мире игрушках-брендах. Поиск на английском языке расширяет кругозор школьников и развивает их языковые навыки. А задание под титлом Online Investigation мотивирует их к тому, чтобы больше узнать по соответствующей тематике. Следующее задание интересно потому, что затрагивает тему приготовления еды, причем самостоятельно. Задание 2. Baking Cookies. Перед записью, как обычно, имеется ряд вопросов, которые заставляют задуматься о том, покупает ли, заказывает ли семья еду в готовом виде на дом или следует традициям домашнего приготовления продуктов. Опять у нас знакомые типы упражнений и разнообразные вопросы. В разделе «Идиомы» есть два фразовых глагола, которые помогут более образно описать процесс поглощения еды. Chow down. The kids couldn't wait to chow down the bacon and eggs for breakfast. Pig out. Don't let the children pig out on pizza and soda. They need to eat vegetables too. После прослушивания следует традиционное упражнение на заполнение пропусков в тексте аудиозаписи, в ходе которого проверяется качество кратковременной памяти у школьников. Далее ребятам предстоит ответить на вопросы, которые фокусируют их внимание на культурных особенностях приготовления выпечки, побуждая таким образом сопоставлять разные культуры, выявлять общие и различные, например, в оформлении рецептуры, специфические ингредиенты, меры веса и так далее. Завершает работу по прослушиванию проектно-исследовательское задание, стимулирующее поисковые навыки ребят. Найти сайт, выбрать рецепт, их воображение, связанное с планированием праздника дома, например, а также реальные навыки приготовления выпечки. Задание 3. Budget Hotel Rooms. Перед тем, как начать прослушивание, нужно ответить на вопросы о том, какие моменты важны для вас при заказе номера в гостинице и почему. Специально выделены глагольные идиомы, которые позволяют передавать нюансы эмотивного характера в процессе общения на тему отдыха в недорогом отеле. Kick back. After we checked into the hotel, we kicked back at the pool and enjoyed the sun. Crash. I crashed as soon as I got to my room because I was exhausted from traveling all day. В следующем задании предлагается больше всего упражнений после аудирования записи. Для того, чтобы можно было обсудить услышанное, имеются вопросы, адресованные личному опыту проживания в гостиницах, предоставляемых услугах и ценах. Поиск специфической информации по сети активизирует навыки ориентации в виртуальном пространстве и тренирует аналитические способности, потому что следует не только найти дешевые варианты мест для отдыха, но и выбрать из них лучший, принимая во внимание цены, местоположение и степень комфорта. Таким образом, мы можем сказать, что материалы разнообразной тематики Сандер Рэндаллс ESL Cyber Listening Lab не только способствуют совершенствованию навыков аудирования, но и развивают гибкие навыки учащихся, необходимые в обыденной жизни, учебе и на работе. Спасибо.
Dear students, today's lecture is devoted to the period that spans the dawn of English literature, namely the ancient Britons and their language, the Roman invasion, the invasion by Germanic tribes, and their literature. We pay due attention to these above-mentioned periods, as literature is closely connected with the life and history of people. To understand English literature, it is necessary to know the history of the country. In the 4th century before Christ, the country we now call England was known as Britain. One of the tribes who lived there was named the Britons. They belonged to the Celtic race and spoke Celtic. There are still some traces of this language found in the English of today. Most of all, we find them in geographical names. Dan, Dam, which stand for Down Dune respectively, and which can be seen in the name of the following towns: Dunsko, Dunedin, Dumbarton. Avon, which stands for river and can be seen in the name of the town Stratford-on-Avon. Kill, which stands for wood and can be seen in the name of the village Kilbrook. Another Celtic tribe, Gaels, lived in Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. Their descendants still live there and use some words of Celtic origin, such as Low Lomond, where Low stands for lake. The life of the ancient Britons was very primitive. They believed that different gods lived in darkest parts of the woods. Some plants, such as mistletoe and the oak tree, were considered to be sacred. Ancient Britons planted corn, lived upon fish and the flesh of their cattle, made coarse cloth for their clothes, and were good warriors. They also built many temples and altars, fragments of which can still be seen in Great Britain. The Britons had a strange and cruel religion, the religion of the Druids. They sacrificed human beings and often burnt men and their animals together with them. Some customs of the Druids are kept in England nowadays. On New Year's Day, mistletoe, which becomes green at this time of the year, is hung up in all houses. The Roman invasion in the year 55 before Christ, Britain was conquered by the Romans. Their language was Latin. The Romans were very practical men. They were good at building many storied houses, bridges, roads, aqueducts, and irrigation channels. The Romans had heard from travelers about some valuable metals which had been found in Britain. Julius Caesar was the first Roman who invaded the country in the 1st century before Christ. To conquer the Britons, the Romans had to encamp troops all over the country. The English cities later rose from these camps and preserved the word castra in their stem. Now there are many English towns which have the Latin ending, such as Lancaster, Manchester, Worcester, and others. The original word castra, which stands for camp, was later pronounced Castor, Chester, and Cester. The Romans brought their civilization with them and taught the Britons to build bridges, houses, and roads. In England, one can still find interesting remains of the Roman times, such as some ruins of public baths and tiled floors of Roman villas. Many of the great highways of England have been built on the military roads once made by the Romans. A large number of English words come from the Latin language. For example, street comes from strata, wall from vallum, port from portus. The Roman occupation lasted for more than 400 years, till 407 Anno Domini, when the Roman troops left Britain. When in about 410 the Romans were withdrawn to protect Rome itself, the Germanic tribes, Angles, Saxons, Jutes, began their invasion of Britain. They came from the shores of the North Sea and the Baltic and settled in what is now the county of Kent. They spoke different dialects of the West Germanic language. From this language, modern German was developed. The Britons fought many battles until at last they were either made slaves or driven to the west and north of Britain, namely Wales, Cornwall, and Scotland. The Angles, Saxons, and Jutes were pagans, and when they began to divide time into weeks and weeks into days, they gave the days the names of their gods. The Angles, Saxons, and Jutes were pagans, and when they began to divide time into weeks and weeks into days, they gave the days the names of their gods. All these invaders created the Anglo-Saxon England, Angleland. During that period, the land was divided into little kingdoms. The most important were Mercia, Northumbria, Kent, and Wessex. The political power soon shifted to Wessex. The Anglo-Saxons were comparatively well developed. They liked to hold meetings in which people could express what they thought and felt. They were brave, hardy, artistic, poetic people who had a highly developed feeling for beauty. The Anglo-Saxons had no written language yet when they conquered Britain, but they had letters called runes, which they carved on wood and stone. The Anglo-Saxons had no written language yet when they conquered Britain, but they had letters called runes, which they carved on wood and stone. The songs, stories, and poems they made up had to be memorized and were handed down from generation to generation. One Saxon poem called Beowulf has reached our days. We can call this period the dawn of English literature. The Germanic tribes had literature, but it wasn't written down. The stories and poems they made up were repeated and remembered. The Germanic tribes were fond of poetry. Their poems didn't remain unchanged. Poets improved them in form and sometimes they changed to make them more interesting. At that time, there were professional poets too, who went from one place to another or had positions at the courts of kings. They sang songs in which they enlarged and magnified the deeds and events which the songs were describing. They even sometimes added supernatural qualities to a hero. Most of those early poems were based on historic facts, but historic elements were obscured by poetic and mythical additions. At first, all the Germanic tribes were pagans, but then, in the 7th century, the Anglo-Saxons were converted to Christianity by missionaries who came from the continent. So, in the 7th century, the Anglo-Saxons became Christians and began composing religious works. After Christianity, was officially adopted by the ruling classes, monastic schools were established while Latin was taught. The most learned people of that time were monks. Some of them began to put in writing poems and songs that reached them. Some people were called scribes. The written Anglo-Saxon language developed on the basis of the Latin alphabet. Beowulf is the most important poem of the Anglo-Saxon period. Though the Angles brought Beowulf with them to England, it has nothing to do with it. The epic isn't even about the Anglo-Saxons, but about the Scandinavians when they lived on the continent in the 3rd or 4th century. The story of Beowulf was written down in the 10th century by an unknown author, and the manuscript is now kept in the British Museum. Its social interest lies in the vivid description of the life of that period, of the manners and customs of the people at that time, of the relations among the members of the society, and in the portrayal of their towns, ships, and feasts. The scene takes place among the Jutes who lived on the Scandinavian peninsula at the time. Their neighbors were the Danes. The Jutes and the Danes were good sailors. The ships sailed round the coast of the peninsula and to far-off lands. The poem describes the warriors in battle and at peace, during their feasts and amusements. The main hero, Beowulf, is a strong, courageous, unselfish, proud, and honest man. He defends his people against the unfriendly forces of nature and becomes the most beloved and kindest king on the earth. And the theme of the poem is the struggle of good against evil. Beowulf fights not for his glory, he fights for the benefit of his people. Although Beowulf was a Jute and his home was Jutland, we say that the Song of Beowulf is an English poem. The social conditions it depicted are English. Both the form and the spirit of the poem are English. The poem is a true piece of English literature. The poem is composed with great skill. The author used many vivid words and descriptive phrases. It's not only the subject of the poem that interests us, but also its style. Beowulf is one of the early masterpieces of the Anglo-Saxon or Old English language. The poem is famous for its metaphors. For instance, the poet calls the sea the swan's road, the body the bone house, a warrior a hero in battle. The epic consists of two parts. The first part tells us how Beowulf freed the Danes from two monsters. Hrothgar, king of the Danes, in his old age had built near the sea a hall called Harad. He and his men gathered there for feasts. One night, as they were all sleeping, a frightful monster called Grendel broke into the hall, killed 30 of the sleeping warriors, and carried off their bodies to devour them in his lair under the sea. The horrible half-human creature came night after night. Fear and death reigned in the great hall. For 12 winters, Grendel's horrible raids continued. At last, the rumor of Grendel and his horrible deeds crossed over the sea and reached Beowulf, who was a man of immense strength and courage. When he heard the story, Beowulf decided to fight the monster and free the Danes. With 14 companions, he crossed the sea. The Danes received Beowulf and his companions with great hospitality. They make a feast in Harad, at which the queen passes the mead cup to the warriors with her own hand. But as night approaches, the fear of Grendel is again upon the Danes. They all withdraw after the king has warned Beowulf of the frightful danger of sleeping in the hall. Beowulf stays in the hall with his warriors, saying proudly that since weapons can't harm the monster, he will wrestle with him barehanded. Breaking into the hall, Grendel seizes one of the sleepers and devours him. Then he approaches Beowulf and stretches out a claw, only to find it clutched into a grip of steel. A sudden terror strikes the monster's heart. He roars, struggles, tries to free his arm, but Beowulf leaps to his feet and grapples his enemy barehanded. After a desperate struggle, Beowulf manages to tear off the monster's arm. Grendel escapes shrieking across the moor and plunges into the sea to die. Beowulf hangs the huge arm with its terrible claws over the king's seat. The Danes rejoice in Beowulf's victory. When night falls, a great feast is spread in Herod. Beowulf receives rich presents. Everybody is happy. The Danes once more go to sleep in the great hall. At midnight, another monster comes, mother of Grendel, who wants to avenge her son. She seizes the king's best friend and counselor and rushes away with him over the fence. The old king is broken-hearted, but Beowulf tries to console him. Then Beowulf prepares for a new fight. He plunges into the horrible place, while his companions wait for him on the shore. After a terrible fight at the bottom of the sea in the cave where the monsters live, Beowulf kills the she-monster with a magic sword, which he finds in the cave. The hero returns to Herod, where the Danes are already mourning for him, thinking him dead. Triumphantly, Beowulf returns to his native land. In the last part of the poem, there is another great fight. Beowulf is now an old man. He has reigned for 50 years, beloved by all his people. He has overcome every enemy but one, a fire dragon, keeping watch over enormous treasure hidden among the mountains. Again, Beowulf goes to fight for his people, but he is old and his end is near. In a fierce battle, the dragon is killed, but the fire has entered Beowulf's lungs. He sends Wiglaf, the only of his warriors, who had the courage to stand by him in his last fight, to the dragon's cave for the treasures. Beowulf dies, leaving the treasures to the people. You will be able to get an insight into what Beowulf is like if you go to the link puzzle-movies.com/Beowulf-2007. Though there are different versions of this film, original, remade, and animated, but tastes differ. Thus, we shed the light on the period known as the dawn of English literature.
Здравствуйте! Сегодня мы рассмотрим понятие «прямая и косвенная речь» в английском языке. В английском языке в разговорной и письменной речи передача чужого высказывания осуществляется двумя способами при помощи прямой и косвенной речи. Прямая речь, direct speech, высказывание другого лица передается досконально, точной цитатой. В английском языке, как и в русском, прямая речь представляет собой отдельное предложение, заключенное в кавычки. Оно может быть повествовательным, вопросительным, повелительным. В плане пунктуации есть небольшие отличия от прямой речи в русском языке. Перед прямой речью в английском языке ставится запятая, а не двоеточие, как вы видите на слайде. Кавычки ставятся после, и перед кавычками ставится точка. В английском языке используются верхние кавычки. He says, I was wrong. В русском варианте он говорит, я был неправ. Обратите внимание на пунктуацию. В английском языке, как вы видите, reported speech представлена. Reported statement, negative sentences and affirmative sentences, orders and requests, and also reported questions. На слайде вы видите структуру косвенной речи. Косвенная речь, иначе reported speech или indirect speech, ее реже называют indirect discourse, это передача чисто слов без точного их цитирования по содержанию в виде придаточных предложений, высказывание придается от третьего лица. При этом меняется порядок слов и возможно применение других временных форм в отличие от прямой речи. A reported speech sentences has two parts, introductory clause and indirect clause. For example, he said that they were classmates. Introductory clause he said, indirect clause they were classmates. При переходе прямой речи в косвенную речь в русском языке мы опускаем кавычки, добавляем союз что и пересказываем от третьего лица содержание прямой речи. При этом запятая, отделяющая слова говорящего от другой речи, и кавычки, которые взяты прямая речь, опускаются. He says that he was wrong. Он говорит, что был неправ. Обратите внимание на английский и русский вариант. При переходе прямой речи direct speech в indirect speech или reported speech происходят следующие изменения. Опускаются кавычки, убирается запятая перед прямой речью, добавляются слова союз that, вводящие придаточное предложение с косвенной речью. В разговорной речи союз that часто опускаются. И также меняются личные местоимения по смыслу I, he и так далее. Если в главном предложении глагол, вводящий прямую речь, стоит в настоящем времени или будущем, то глагол в придаточном не меняется. Прямая речь, переход прямой речи в косвенную речь. He says I was wrong. Он говорит, я был неправ. He says that he was wrong. Если в главном предложении глагол, вводящий прямую речь, стоит в одном из прошедших времен, то в косвенной речи происходят следующие изменения. Обратите внимание на 3 пункта, которые следует изменить. Verb, tense, то есть глагольную форму, adverbs of time and place and demonstrative pronouns, наречия времени, места и указательные местоимения, and pronouns. В косвенной речи, в придаточном предложении глагол изменяется в соответствии с правилами согласования времен, sequence of tenses rule, то есть принимает соответствующую форму прошедшего времени и логикой повествования. Reporting the past direct speech into reported speech. Мы можем передать чьи-то слова спустя какое-то время. Reporting the past. Время в данном случае изменяется. Обратите внимание, present simple меняется на past simple. I want to begin to learn Japanese. She said that she wanted to learn Japanese. Present continuous меняется на past continuous. We are watching film. They said they were watching film. Present perfect меняется на past perfect. I have brushed my teeth. She said that she had brushed her teeth. Reporting the past direct speech, reporting speech в past simple. Обратите внимание на данное предложение. Present simple меняем на past simple. То есть, I want to learn Japanese. She said that she wanted to learn Japanese. И при переводе данного предложения на русский язык в придаточном предложении глагол переводится настоящим временем. Она сказала, что она хочет изучать японский язык. Обратите внимание на следующий слайд. Перевод предложений past simple переводится past perfect, то есть I've lost my watch. И Pete said that he had lost his watch. Past continuous может использоваться, остаться или past continuous, или past perfect continuous. He was playing the piano. He said that he was playing the piano, or he said he had been playing the piano. Окей, но обратите внимание на перевод future simple, future in the past. I will meet you at 7. She said that she would meet me at 7. Will меняется на глагол would, так называемое будущее в прошедшем. На данном слайде представлена таблица sequence of tenses, перевод предложений из прямой речи в косвенную, который меняется глаголы. На 10-м слайде мы видим таблицу expressions of time and place in indirect speech. На 11-м слайде представлены pronouns and adjectives, здесь тоже changes necessary. Обратите внимание на слайд 12. На данном слайде представлены указательные местоимения this and this. This used in the expressions usually becomes that. She says she's coming this week. She said that she was coming that week. This and that used as adjectives and usually changed to the. He said, I bought his pearl, this pearl to the mother. He said that he had bought the pearls for his mother. Указательные местоимения this and this used as pronouns can become it, they, them. He said he will discuss this tomorrow. He said that they would discuss it, the matter, the next day. Обратите внимание на слайд 13. Tenses do not change when up to day reporting. Мы можем передать чьи-то слова сразу, и время в данном случае не меняется. The reporting word is in the present simple, present perfect or future simple. The reporting words are still true. The speaker expresses general truths, permanent states, or conditions. Conditional sentences type 2 remains unchangeable. Обратите внимание на данную таблицу. Здесь представлены те изменения, которые происходят при переводе прямой речи в косвенную, если это истинная правда. То есть, for example, the teacher said, the earth goes round the sun. The teacher said that the earth goes round the sun. То есть изменения не происходят, потому что это правда. И обратите внимание на последнее предложение. I said I would like to see it. I said that I would like to see it. В данном предложении представлено условное предложение второго типа, которое тоже не меняется. Рассмотрим теперь употребление глаголов to say and to tell with direct speech. Say can introduce a statement or follow it. Tom said, I've just heard the news, or I've just heard the news, Tom said. Inversion of say and noun subject is possible, where say follows the statement. I've just heard the news, said Tom. Say plus to plus person addressed is possible, but this phrase must follow the direct statement. It cannot introduce it. Inversion is not possible here. Say and tell with direct speech. Глагол say, to say, and глагол to take somebody with direct speech. For example, and если после глагола to say есть указание на то, кому эта речь обращена, то глагол to say меняется на глагол to tell. Jeff said to Anne, I'm going to Glasgow. Jeff told Anne he was going to Glasgow. Союз that часто опускается после глаголов to say, to think, to know. She remembered she had asked him about it. Statement in reported speech and глагол say, tell and ask with indirect speech. И вы видите, какие изменения, как мы рассматривали, происходят, когда мы употребляем глагол say. For example, she said that she was very happy. Say to при наличии дополнения, обозначающего адресата. Say to plus personal object that clause. She said to me that she was very happy. And say to plus object is possible, but less than tell plus object. Tell to say меняется на to tell somebody при наличии косвенного дополнения. Tell plus personal object, that plus clause. Required the person addressed. Jeff said to Anne, I'm going to Glasgow. Jeff said to Anne, she was going to Glasgow. She told me that she was very happy. Note also that может употребляться в сочетании how or about. He told us how he had crossed the mountains. Was плюс object плюс about плюс в синговом окончанием. He told us about crossing the mountains and he told us about this journey. How, say, tell and ask are used in speech. Say в выражениях say hello, say good morning, good afternoon, good something, somebody, so the phrase, a few phrase and so on. With tell the truth, tell a lie, tell a story, tell present, and tell, for example, something, tell the way, tell somebody so, tell something, fortune, etc. And ask a question, ask a favor, ask the price, ask after somebody, and so on. На данном слайде представлены вводные глаголы. For example, в следующей конструкции verb plus that plus clause, то есть глагол плюс слово связка that и трансформированное предложение. For example, admit, I was really unfriendly to him. She admitted she had been unfriendly to him. Or глагол deny, отрицать. I don't break your favorite cup. He denied that he had broken the cup. Ну и так далее. Остальные примеры вы видите на слайде. На данном слайде представлены модальные глаголы косвенной речи. Modal verbs in reported speech. Модальные глаголы в косвенной речи must, can, may могут трансформироваться и переходить в прошедшее время. Can имеет форму could и had been able эквивалент. Be to может употребляться в значении was, were to. May в прошедшем времени might. Глагол must может быть неизменяемым или имеет эквивалент have to or had to. Note, обратите внимание, модальные глаголы could, would, might and should do not change, то есть они не изменяются при переходе в косвенную речь. Значит, обратите внимание на слайд. В данном слайде у нас используется в прямой речи глагол can, который трансформируется в косвенной речи на глагол could. He said that the contract could be signed in the evening. Если модальный глагол must выражает необходимость что-то сделать в силу обстоятельств, в косвенной речи происходит замена его глаголом had с частицей to. Глаголы should or to used to не изменяется. He said the contract can be signed in the evening. He said that the contract could be signed in the evening. Он сказал, что контракт может быть подписан вечером. Глагол must заменяется в косвенной речи глаголом had, когда must выражает необходимость совершения действия в силу определенных обстоятельств. She said, I must send him a telegram at once. Она сказала, я должна послать ему телеграмму немедленно. She said that she had to send him a telegram at once. Она сказала, что должна послать ему телеграмму немедленно. Когда же глагол must выражает приказание или совет, то он остается без изменения. He said to her, you must consult a doctor. При переводе в косвенную речь глагол остается таким же, без изменения. He told her that she must consult a doctor. Он сказал ей, что она должна посоветоваться с врачом. Запомните, глаголы should и ought в косвенной речи не изменяются. She said to him, you should ought to send them a telegram immediately. She told him that she should ought to Send them a telegram immediately. Сегодня мы с вами рассмотрели такие понятия, как и прямая и косвенная речь, отличие прямой речи и косвенной речи в английском языке в плане пунктуации от прямой речи и косвенной речи в русском языке, и какие происходят трансформации при переходе прямой речи в косвенную, если в главном предложении глагол, вводящий прямую речь, стоит в одном из прошедших времен.